All right, ladies, welcome back to the Beyond the Strategy Summit. I'm so excited to introduce you to Bex Hogan. I literally saw her on, I think it was an ad or something on Facebook, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is my style. Something happened. Maybe it was you were talking about your podcast in a group or something. Somewhere I saw you, and I was like, I feel like we need to connect. So I reached out. So I'm super excited now that I know your backstory and how you got into this thing. So please introduce yourself, and then we will dive in.
Wow. Okay. So, yes, I'm Bex Hogan, and I help women essentially say fuck you to the voices that are keeping you small. The people or the conditioning or the voices from your past that are making you live under shoulds and expectations and rules of other people, so that you can create a business that you are totally obsessed with, making the success inevitable.
I love it. Okay, and now I want to dive into the backstory because this is the way that you are showing up and the way that you like come across now is completely different than how this all started. So tell us a little bit about your backstory and how you got into this.
Okay, so my backstory, I don't know how far to go back, but essentially I was bullied quite severely at school, and hence fuck you to the bullies. So I created a business just before my first child was born. In fact, I wasn't even pregnant with her when I first created the business. I became pregnant with her about 6 months later. And that business, although it served me well, I kind of realized, and again, it wasn't until I started doing this kind of work that I was hiding. I built a business where I'd built this almost kind of self-preservation protective bubble around me. I was hiding myself from the world. I was sat in my studio, which ironically is where I am right now, day in, day out in my own head. And something happened in my local village, and I was so in my own head for months and months and months. And then my youngest had started school. So I was 7 years into this business by this point. My youngest then started school, and I walked into that school playground, and it was like going back 15 years back to school, and all of that dread and anxiety of just women, just it felt as though everyone had their kind of cliques, and I didn't have a place, and it just brought everything back. And it really affected how I then showed up in my business. I felt judged when I was showing up online. So this was back in 2022. So probably a couple of years before that was when we started to figure out reels and things on Instagram. So video was starting to be pushed forward. And all of a sudden, there was this huge online exposure, like this visibility that we were being forced to do. So my business was really successful, but it was built on the back of photographs. I didn't have to show up. So it was just all of these things like all happened at the same time. And I realized then that, well, it was actually a couple of months after that. So that was September, that obviously went back into school. And then in January 2023, I lost a friend to suicide. And at that point, it was an old school friend, a boy that just made me blush from afar. He was just like my dream bad boy of school, you know? And he was so popular, and it just made me think about like why. And I was still in my own head at that point, and I felt so lost and lonely and isolated in this protective self-preservation bubble that I had created for myself. And I spent about 2 weeks crying for him and for me, the loss of my life and what I'd accidentally, I suppose, created for myself. And that's when I discovered coaching. And so I was being coached for myself. So I was healing myself, but I loved it so much that I decided to retrain and go all in and help other women. So honestly, I wanted to do this work in terms of focusing this specific niche on saying fuck you to the school bullies, to work with women who have been bullied, whether it is at school or whether it's, growing up and in workplaces or relationships. But I talked myself out of it for 2 years because I was convincing myself that it was only me, which of course is not true. Of course it's not. And so it wasn't really until January this year that I went all in on this niche. And I have had the most amazing conversations with women who it happens to so many people. But I think the biggest thing was people don't really understand. It was a lot of head nodding, a lot of like agreeing, yes, yes, yes. But when it then came to it, they were like, well, I've done the work. It doesn't affect me anymore. But then when we dug under the surface, looked at the way that they were talking to themselves and how they were hiding, essentially, not putting themselves out there, they've created this amazing offer that is nothing that they've ever seen before. And there's so much of them in it, but actually they took themselves out of it because it's too exposing. And so
Mhm.
this is the work that I do.
I love that. This is like the perfect conversation to have about beyond the strategy, because no matter what strategy you're trying to build with, if you don't fix this stuff that's under, like you just said, you got to dig underneath, like what are the layers underneath, then no strategy will work because you will literally hide from it, right? Like the real thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
And you end
So,
up just spinning your wheels.
mhm. So what would you say to somebody who comes in, who first comes to you and it's just like, I'm trying to build this business, I have this vision, but when I go to put myself out there, like I can only hear, the judgments from all these other people. Like, where do you even start with that conversation? Because like you said, some people think they've done the work or it's so long ago that it's not affecting them anymore. But then if you really dig into it, like they're still worried about Kimberly from high school or what, you know what I mean? So how do you start that like healing? Here's how you step out of that.
Yeah. So it all starts with awareness, of course. So figuring out where that comes up. So what trigger points that comes up for. What are you doing when you're hearing those voices? Is it just when you're doing this, or are you hearing it when you're out with particular people in particular environments? Like really getting to understand where that shows up. And then we start to kind of try and dig under the surface a bit, get into these subconscious beliefs. So going back to when they're a child, where did this first start? So I'm a trained master NLP practitioner as well. So I use a lot of NLP techniques in there to really uncover at the root where this happened so that we can start to change the narrative and change the stories to stop it really from showing up.
I think it's so easy to feel like, oh, I'm just not consistent and give yourself such a hard time, or, oh, I'm in avoidance because maybe I'm not cut out for this, or, like we think that it's our like surface level problem. And I know a lot of people in our real world, I call it my real world, not my online world, because people in my online world, they get me, but people in my real world often don't get me. So it's
Yeah, I
easy
get
for
that.
somebody to say like, oh, you're just not trying hard enough, or you just need to be more consistent, or you're always 1 foot in, 1 foot out, or what. Like there's so much shame that is put on. I don't know about the guys because I don't talk to them, but in women in business,
Sure.
so much shame, so much guilt, so much, I don't know, I don't even know how to like pull the right word out, but it's when you really dig into why you're not being consistent, why you're self-sabotaging, why, you know what I mean? Like it's one thing to say, oh, I'm self-sabotaging, but what you're saying is, yeah, but now we need to go three or more layers deep to find out what that's actually, where that's coming from. And so what you're saying too is when you go to create content and then you have nothing to say, or when you're out with friends and you hear something and then you recoil back and you don't want to talk about your business, or right, like the ways that shows up for women is different. But at the end of the day, I think we're also supposed to be, or we think we're supposed to be at a certain level of don't give a shit just because we're a certain age now, but there is still shit underneath, right?
You hear that all the time though, don't you? People saying, I'm in my 40s now, I'm in my fuck it era. Like people say this all the time, but of course there's still an element of shame, of judgment, of comparison. That doesn't really go away. But what we can do is create tools that can help you move through it faster. So, you tell yourself something and something like, I'm not good enough to do this, or I'm not clever enough to do this. Like, success is never meant for me. These common things that all come up all the time. And we've been potentially telling ourselves that in one way or another for a very long time. So we've created these grooves essentially in our minds that are deep. And so it's not just going to be filled in and disappear. that can't happen. The only way that we can do that is by creating new grooves in our mind. Like, so we're rewriting them, we're giving ourselves a new narrative. And the only way that we can do that really is by repeating better thoughts. So there's obviously work to do to get to there, but I'm not talking about affirmations either, really. I'm talking about creating something that feels slightly better. So not all of a sudden, I'm unstoppable, I can do this, no, nothing can harm, like all of this crazy, ridiculous, I love myself. Like, we can get there eventually, maybe, if you want to, but something that is going to be a lot more realistic. And we repeat those thoughts. But there needs to be an element of feeling in it. You have to feel it in your body. Otherwise, it's never going to happen.
So give me a couple examples of what you would recommend to a client that was struggling. Just like some random, like you stand and you look in the mirror. Like, how do you do this?
Yeah, well, you can stand and look in the mirror or literally just write it on a post-it note, stick it on the mirror and say it when you're brushing your teeth. Like, you don't have to. So I don't know if you've ever seen this. Do you know Davina McCall? She's okay. So she's a UK presenter. She's very big in the UK, and she talks about self-love. And she hated herself. She didn't like the way that she looked. She didn't like much about her for a very long time. And she spoke recently in an interview about her journey. So talking about mirror work, she said, you can't go exactly what we've just said. You can't go from hating yourself to I love you. It's ridiculous. So she was every single day like, oh, like your hair looks all right today. I like what you're wearing today. You look okay. And just gradually changing bit by bit by bit until you kind of convince yourself enough that actually I do look okay. And then actually maybe, you look quite good today. Do you know what I mean? Like, you're just leveling it up a bit at a time until you get to that point where I love you, which takes a long time when those grooves run really deep.
There we go. Okay, technical difficulties. We're back. Okay, so you were just saying how eventually you can like get to a place where you convince yourself that you are beautiful or whatever, but it's like you have to go step by step.
You have to go step by step. And I think, so many people think that that's just who they are, that they can't change the way that they think about themselves. They can't change those thoughts. And so they end up just spinning their wheels, not understanding that there is another way because it's not a quick fix. And everyone, I think, we're in the world of Amazon Prime, right? Everyone wants a quick fix. And I think that's then when people go to the strategy because they think, well, that's going to be the plaster. That's all I need. The strategy is not working for me. So I'm just going to maybe hop along and see if I can find another one. But actually, nothing's ever going to work unless you do the foundational work underneath, which is fixing the way that you think about yourself and the way that you believe about yourself. And actually, do you know what I found is that women, I think the biggest issue is that women don't believe that, or they don't admit to themselves actually what they want, or that what they want is possible for them. So what their version of success is, they don't quite believe that they can achieve that. And so they talk themselves out of making those moves to get there. Whatever that might be, whether we're talking about monetary figure or lifestyles or whatever it is, if it's so far removed from their familiar reality, which is now, they can end up, and I'm not saying this is forever, of course, but they can take a lot longer to get there because of these stories that they keep telling themselves that are conditioned from the past.
Yeah, I think it also doesn't help anybody when we see just the highlight reel on social media from everybody else and like people just saying like, you just have to choose, you just have to make a decision. It's like, no, there's more to it. And I also think the thing that dropped in for me when you were talking about that is how important it is to have community and how connection with other women who actually understand where you're at is so important. And for anyone listening, that's obviously everyone here would be building a business. It's like, it's so important that you share like the hard parts, like the vulnerable parts, because that's actually how we come together and connect. And
Yeah.
then that's how we build communities and movements. And that's how we band together to, like, I don't know, what do they call it? All a rising tide lifts all boats. Like, get in the
I like
harbor
that.
with the people that are going the same place you want to go. And then you, as a collective, you rise together. It sounds cheesy, but it's true.
But it's true. So I've got a community which is my freebie to everyone that's listening to come into to my community that's full of trainings and activations. It's actually called Unedited, because in there I really encourage the women to share everything. If they're struggling, share it. If they're having wins, share it. Like we are, like you just said, we're all in this together. And the more that we see that, because I think, you've talked about the highlight reels. There's so many like shiny coaches out there that say, well, I made 6 figures in 6 months. Yeah, okay, but what about before that? What were you doing before that? No one shares that stuff. No one shares the hard. It's always just the big numbers, the big shiny stuff.
Yeah. And that actually specifically held me back. Like, that's where my imposter syndrome came from, because I was always like, well, how am I going to, like, my background was sales. Like, I am great at selling. I've sold millions of dollars of insurance. I used to sell it. I used to go around and hand out my business card in industrial parks. Like, I know what it's like to cold call and to pound the pavement. And then I came into the online space and everybody and their dog was making like $1 million overnight. And I was like, what is wrong with me? And it was just like, okay, but what you weren't seeing behind the scene is that they were glomming onto one tiny little thing, or they were just straight up faking it till they made it. And at the end of the day, that put me into this spin of imposter syndrome, because I was like, I'm not going to claim anything I haven't actually done. Like, this is crazy, this space. And then it was like, I wanted to hide under a rock because I did not want to leave where I felt so forced in my career all the time to do that again in my online business. And so it has taken me a long time to really just like own who I am and stand in my own. And I'm a really confident, aggressive person, but not when it comes to like what's going on underneath the surface, right? So it's like, it doesn't matter what you see on the outside. It's like, until you start sharing the raw, real truth that's going on the inside, that's what actually speeds up your results.
Absolutely. But I think what you've just shared there is what slows a lot of women down, because they go into this spiral of comparing and not feeling worthy and good enough, and that success is only meant for her because she did it in 6 months. But hold on a minute, I'm 10 months in and I haven't achieved that yet. Like, you
Yeah.
have all of these questions just going around in your mind. And
Well, and guess what I did then? I started chasing strategy after strategy after strategy after strategy. And I wish somebody had grabbed a hold of me and shook me and said, Mare, like, you're amazing. Talk about what you know. you know?
right. But I guess it feels easier, doesn't it? It feels easier to chase the strategy than to go inwards and deal with actually what's going on in your head and in your body. And I
Yes.
think because people think that, well, it's hard work. It is. Holding a mirror up to
Uncomfortable.
yourself is,
Yeah.
yeah, hard work, uncomfortable. And I think people are put off because it takes time. Whereas strategy feels like a quick fix, like we said. But actually, the more you chase it, the longer it's going to get you, the longer it's going to take to get you there. Whereas if you'd have just started with yourself first, you could skip all of that.
Had we all known.
Had we all known? I know, I know, I know.
I think also there's a certain dopamine you get from, like, a dopamine hit that comes from like going through modules, diving into something that, a new strategy, a new course, a new this, like, it's very exciting. But that's also why they say most people never even get 50% of the way through a book or a course or whatever. It's because it's the excitement of getting into it. It's not the actual, you know, finishing it. And because most of the time you run into some sort of a block in your head and you're like, oh, I think maybe this isn't for me, or this doesn't work.
Yeah,
This
yeah,
hasn't worked for me in 40 days, so I'm out.
exactly. Or you get shiny object syndrome and you chase the next best thing.
Totally. Yeah, totally. I think that's the pandemic.
Yeah. But I think the online space, this space that we're in, is so loud. It's so noisy, and it's full of, like we were saying at the beginning, like all of these shoulds and expectations about what you need to be doing in your business. And people don't really talk about, I feel like, the business coaches, and this is no shade on business coaches because I think there are some brilliant ones out there, but they are so much louder than the mindset like the I don't really like to call myself a mindset mindset coach, because there are too many people out there calling themselves a mindset coach that are not qualified in that at all. But you know, the under layers, the foundational, the belief work, the inner critic work, I think these people, me included, we don't shout that much because our work isn't like a tangible, it's a feeling. It's all about the way that you feel about yourself, the way that you show up for yourself. But it is also powerful because when you can do that, when you can stand in your own power, that's when everything else starts to work.
It's true. It's beyond the strategy. I
Yeah.
think that a lot of women in our space have, especially the ones who have been in this for 5 years or longer, I think there's been a huge shift in the conversations and in the depth. I think the depth is coming out. I think there were so many surface level things that sold and everybody bought in because there were such shiny numbers. And like you said, business coaches can be extra loud because I'm a business coach, but I'm going to tell you behind the scenes of why I felt like I couldn't be who I wanted to be as a business coach is because I was running into straight imposter syndrome because of all the income claims everyone was making around me. But then when I was getting in on the other side of some of these programs and seeing what was behind the curtain, a lot of it was smoke and mirrors, and it was really disappointing. And so I think that eventually a lot of us realize that we are actually the bottleneck. And so that's, I think the energetic side of things, the mindset side, like all of that has come way up in the scale of importance, like across the board, I think. I mean, it was always present, but it was always like, yeah, we have a mindset person coming in once a month. And it was like, now that I look back, I'm like, I could have used that resource pretty much every single day in order to even attempt that strategy. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it was such a blip on the radar. And now it's like, no, if you don't have your head on straight and your heart in alignment with it, it's so hard. Entrepreneurship's hard as it is, let alone
It
battling
is.
against yourself every day, right?
Yeah, for sure. I definitely see the energetic side making a big movement. They're big in like I feel as though they're like it all depends on what circles you're in, doesn't it? Because I
Yeah.
think sometimes this space can feel quite crowded and quite claustrophobic, but then you meet somebody who's not in that circle, and then you see actually there's this whole other world of coaches and they're doing things a bit differently. So it's very easy to get caught up in what everyone's doing in this circle and not really looking up outside. That was a big problem that I had actually at the beginning of last year. And I thought that was the coaching industry. And it wasn't really until I started going to events that I realized that actually it's massive.
Yeah.
And this whole kind of space that you find yourself in is actually quite just a pocket.
I think you might have had a similar experience like with hosting your podcast, but when I've been looking for speakers for my events, it like actually blows my mind that I haven't, it's just like what you said, like you think the world is kind of smaller. It's almost like when you're in your hometown and you know everybody in your high school and like
Yeah.
maybe a couple other high schools if they also played volleyball or something, you know what I mean? And you think that
Yeah.
that's maybe there's a couple other people out there, but that's it. But then when you actually start, like you said, you're networking, you're talking to other people, you're going into all these different groups to see who's kind of around. It like blows my mind how many women are creating amazing like wealth and choices for themselves and their families and helping other women. And yes, there are some bad eggs in any basket, but there are a lot of really, really good people in our space. And it's so neat to like, earlier you said, like, have you heard of so and so? She's big in the UK. And I'm like, no, not at all. But I'm in Canada and I haven't even scratched the surface on even people in Canada, let alone the States yet. You know what I mean? And we're like neighbors. So it's such a huge world out there. But I think that's also so important for anybody listening to this who kind of feels like, well, who would I even sell to? It's like, get that out of your head. You
Yes.
will attract the perfect fit people for you as long as you keep putting yourself out there, the real you, because until you put out the real you, your people can't actually, it's like the frequency thing, right? The tuning fork can't hear the other tuning fork unless they actually share the real thing.
Yeah. I was so guilty of that when I first started this business. So I think I mentioned before I had a creative business that was 7 years old when I pivoted to this, retrained, and I was selling to people all over the world. I was on Etsy, I was on a few UK marketplace websites as well, and I never felt as though I was going to run out of people to buy. It felt like there was this huge pond, But then I started the coaching work and I felt like my audience was tiny. I had a few hundred people in my Instagram, maybe on Facebook as well. And I was like panicked all the time, like, oh, have I exhausted it? Is that it? Is it over? So I think 100% what you just said, like if you get that out of your head and you realize you're just scratching the surface, your people may not have even found you yet. And that's when I decided that actually I'm going all in with the bullying niche, because I know that there are women out there that need me, that need what I have to share with them, but I have to go out and find them.
I love that you said that because that is, I talk about anchors in my business all the time. Like you have to have anchors in your schedule and anchors that kind of like hold you from being pulled off course all the time. And you might not only be dealing with somebody who was technically bullied, but they're going to hear you loud and clear because you're sharing your truth and your story. And if they're, worried about judgment from other people, whether it was from what they would consider bullying or not, they still hear what you're saying and they can merge. Like I call it like talking on the freeway. There's 3 lanes, A, B, and C. If you talk straight down the middle of the B, A and C can hear you and merge into the lane. But if you talk to all 3 at the same time, nobody can hear you. It's a traffic jam. And I just believe that that's true. And the more I talk to women, the more I realize like part of your story that you think was like the worst part or the pain or the hard or that's the part that is the true connection. And so would you have ever guessed 10 years ago that you would be, picking a niche to be a life or mindset coach around people who've been bullied? No, you would have never.
Way.
You have to walk through the steps and get to the place where all of a sudden it just kind of like by taking action, the clarity comes one day, right? And then you're like, this is the thing, I'm going all in.
It really does. I love that analogy of the lanes. I'm going to use that.
Go for it. I love it.
That is a great analogy. But it's turning pain into purpose, isn't it? That's what it is. And I think when you are sharing your lived experience, when you are helping people from your experience, your heart, your mind, your journey, it becomes so much easier because you know what they could be thinking, you know what they're feeling, like you can explain it so much more viscerally. Is that a word?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you were to just like pick a niche from the air and think, right, this is what I'm going to go all in on, because how do you understand what they're thinking about at 2 o'clock in the morning? How do you understand, what's holding them back in their business if you haven't gone through that whole process yourself?
Totally.
So yeah, sometimes I do question it because I think, oh God, like I'm being really vulnerable here and I'm not really sure, like, if I want to go there emotionally. But I also know that, I don't know if I told you this, I'm a kids self-defense instructor as well. I didn't tell you that. So on a Monday evening, I teach kids self-defense to protect them from bullies.
Yeah,
Like,
that's awesome.
Either side, yeah, because that's how passionately I feel about it. And I think if I'm doing, like, I need to do this, I feel as though I've lived this path because I need to do this. I need to help these women. I need to share my story, and I need to help the kids so that they don't become these women.
Well, and I also just want to add that the best part about online business and being your own boss is that if you decide to morph into or pivot into something else later, you have 1,000% control of that. I think people think, oh, if I niche down, then I'm screwed. And it's like, you are not. You are setting yourself free to grow. And who knows what's next? Like, don't worry about that part. Just move your feet, right?
Just, yeah, do what feels good.
I love that. Okay, so I'm going to drop the link for them to be able to grab. What's the Telegram channel called?
It's called Unedited.
Oh, yeah, you said that. Sorry, my bad.
Yeah.
Mom brain.
That's okay.
I'm in perimenopause. That's what I keep saying to everything.
Me too. It's fun.
In my brain these days. Okay, so that's amazing. And then, okay, so what would be, I just love ending all my interviews like this, but what would be the one piece of advice you'd give someone if they were like, oh my God, Bex, I want to hit 6 figures so bad this year. I know I have what it takes. I have all these pieces built, but the strategy, I know it's not the strategy. Like, what is one piece of advice that you would give to that woman to just do the thing?
One piece of advice. Well, that's tricky, isn't it?
Give me your best.
Just one piece of advice. Well, we've touched a little bit on this before. I would say tune in. really listen to what's going on under the surface and think about where that might have come from. Because once you've done that, it becomes so much easier to change that story. Once you recognize, like literally spend a week of really tuning into yourself and listen. Every time you feel yourself pulling back, you feel yourself retreating or, not doing the thing, not making the moves that you want to make, write it down. Write down your goal at the top of the page and write down what it is that's coming up for you, why you don't believe that you can make that happen for yourself. And then at the end of the week, look for the pattern and then look for the story and start to rewrite it.
Yeah, I love that. Thanks, Bex. This was amazing. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah. Have a wonderful day, guys. And I'm going to drop the links to the free Telegram channel. She has got all kinds of trainings and free things in there for you. And I'll also drop the link to your socials so that they can connect with you there.
Amazing. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Thank you.